Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal Daily. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Justino Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome to another episode. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, guys, I'm sorry I was late. I was sitting here and basically my internet was playing up. So it was just like, it just kept rolling, the little circle just over and over. And I was like, I need to start. But I was sitting here, but I wasn't on time. So I do apologize for that. But on today's show, we're going to be going through the Yeremi Pino interest that seems to be somewhat legitimate. Ben Jacobs has kind of talked about how that actually has some legs to it. Sasha Tavialeri was talking about our interest in Paqueta. Neto is being offered to several Premier League clubs. We've also been linked to Callum Hudson-Odoi, and the rumor around Pepe being of high interest to Nice is gathering a lot of speed. So I wouldn't say like it's exciting times, but what I would say is that we've gotten some movement on these outgoings, and it looks like it could be possible that we bring somebody in. Fabrizio Romano has kind of said that um, Arsenal will bring in at least one player. That's what he said. So, that's on him if we don't, in terms of like him putting that out there. But I do think Arsenal will bring in at least one player. Whether or not we bring in a midfielder, who knows? But I do think that Pepe going to Nice potentially would be the opening that we needed for a winger, which I do think is really, really, really important. There's 112 of you guys already in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And I just want to let you guys know as well, like, there's been some questions around whether or not I'm going to be doing live shows or not anymore. There's always going to be live shows on She Knows Arsenal. That's my bread and butter. That's how I got started. And this is my literal favorite part of the day. I'm playing around with some pre-recorded shorter videos because that's what some of you guys asked for. And I'm just trying to make sure that everybody gets a little bit of what they want. So there'll still be live shows almost daily, a couple times a week, as well as a live show that specifically goes over the game that just passed. And then there will be short videos in between. So essentially, you guys will be getting more content than you did before. It'll just be in different ways, which I hope is okay for you guys because, yeah, I do this for you guys. I did a short yesterday asking you guys whether or not we still needed Yuri Tielemans, and that video did really, really well. So I do recommend you guys go and watch it. It's about 8 minutes long or so after we get out of here. Now let's see who's here in the chat. Pap says hello. Hello, Pap. How are you? Um, let's see. Lloyd says we need to get one more player before the end of the window. This can't be it. The way the team is playing, the club will say, okay, which would be a huge mistake. We need more goals from midfield. The one thing that I will say about that, Lloyd, is that, of course, I have fears about that as well. Like we're playing so well that they won't feel like we need anything else. But the club have been pretty consistent, in saying, well, at least from Arteta's point of view. And Adu also, after Zinchenko came in, he also kind of reiterated that they want to finish the window strong and incomings and outgoings are still on the cards. So I don't think that they envision what we're doing as good enough. Like, of course, if the window shut and we didn't bring anybody else in, I'm not sure how Arteta would feel. I know that we can work with what we have, but I do think it's on the cards for the club to bring in somebody else, at least one more player. Let's see. Lynn says, I totally agree with everyone is saying about buying more players. However, I do think there will be two come in. And I think the reason it's gone quiet is because clubs like Man United can start bidding for the players we are in for. And that is what Arsenal are trying to avoid. Yeah, like I do think that, maybe we want to keep things a little bit more quiet because there's quite a few clubs that are still very, very active in the window. Chelsea's very active as well as Manchester United. And we've all kind of been linked to the same players this entire window. So I do kind of understand that viewpoint. For me, I just think like from the way that I see it, I really do think it's just about outgoings. I think we got the three players in that we could uh before outgoings, and then we were like, okay, we need to fix some of this. We have moved on quite a bit of players since we brought in Zinchenko, and now we're trying to free up a little bit of space to bring in some more players, some of the wage bill as well. So I think it's just as simple as making sure that we do the right thing and don't bring in a bunch of players and leave it to the last minute to remove players out, because the last thing you want is to have like 4 or 5 players that are not registered. I just don't think Arsenal want to have to deal with something like that. So I think you're totally right around like wanting to keep things quiet. But my main thought process behind this is that they just wanted to get players out because we had a really bloated squad after Zinchenko came in. Giovanni says we need a right back, a center midfield, and a right wing, but I reckon we'll only get one. And personally, I think we should prioritize right wing because we have players in midfield. And if Arteta and Adu was right with Jesus and Zinchenko, maybe Vieira is enough for now with us in midfield and go get Paqueta in January, which I saw the rumor about. We will talk about that in just a second. Lynn says, me personally, I've always said that we will be Anthony because he is nearest to Rafinha. He's just so expensive. And I feel like if we were to even think about trying to bring him in, Manchester United would push for him just because. Godwin says, finally a live show. Blaze says, hi, Jess. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We'll get to all the rumors that you guys want to talk about. So first, we'll talk about Yeremi Pino. Obviously, like I've had my suspicions on whether or not we're actually in for him or not. I do feel like the constant kind of like, oh, Liverpool are also interested and stuff like that made me kind of feel like, okay, we'll see if the interest actually firms up. Just a couple of days ago, there was a rumor out there that Arsenal were like on the brink of putting in an offer and on a brink of putting in an official offer. I don't know if any of that ever happened. The whole Adu is in Valencia because it's an hour away from Villarreal and he's going to close the deal was kind of debunked. You know, he was just hanging out with his family. And Fabrizio Romano said his agents are actually in the UK. So I'm not sure really what's going on with this, but Ben Jacobs has kind of confirmed that there are legs to it. We're interested in him. And it's just whether or not we actually firm up that interest, like kind of with an official bid. Villarreal are not in a great financial situation. And as Unai Emery already kind of said in one of his press conferences, is if a big bid comes in for him, they will have to take it. And so I would imagine that there's several Premier League clubs that are circling around Yeremi Pino. Everybody is kind of looking for attackers. If you kind of look at it, Manchester United are looking for attackers probably on both sides. Chelsea are probably an attacker too light. We're an attacker light. So when you look at the Premier League just in general, you have 3 clubs that are fighting for top 4 that are probably going to be looking at Yeremi Pino. And then you have Liverpool lurking kind of in the background, probably trying to see if everybody is going to, you know, kind of make a move and then they'll decide whether or not they actually want to go for it as well. So I would imagine that this one could go anyway at this point. I did see that Chelsea are in contact with Yeremi Pino. So once again, this really could just be a matter of, you know, who puts in the biggest bid, who, you know, sells him the project the best possible way. And yeah, so we'll definitely see what happens with him. But, you know, this is a player that is quite young. He's 19 and I think what we're looking at with the players that we're being linked to is that they're going to kind of be in and around the same level as Martinelli and Bukayo Saka. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but what I will say is that it keeps our floor at a high level, but it doesn't improve our ceiling. So I don't imagine, you know, a Yeremi Pino or a Callum Hudson-Odoi being able to certify that we're going to have the goals necessary to get into the top 4. Or if Gabriel Jesus were to get injured, I don't think you could 100% say that they will pick up the slack with those goals. And so it's not a bad thing. It's just something to note when, you know, you went from somebody like a Rafinha, also Arsenal fans are looking at Gnabry and Sane. Those 3 players probably would have been able to push Arsenal into that next category of like teams that like they are right there. But I think we're not far off, but these types of players will just kind of be very similar to what we have, which is not a bad thing. It's definitely better than what, you know, we have at the moment. Marquinhos is doing so well for the under 23s, but my kind of feeling is that he probably will go on loan. I think he's too good for the under 23s, but not quite ready to really make a significant um, make a significant difference in the first team, if that makes sense. You guys can let me know if you think differently, but I think, somebody like a Pino would fit straight into what we're trying to do. Young players, um, that are going to improve, that fit the philosophy. He's a great presser. He's a good passer. He's very similar to Bukayo Saka and Martinelli. It's just a matter of like, how is he going to take us forward or make us better? No, but he'll keep us. He'll He'll make sure that we can sustain the level that we're at if Martinelli or Saka cannot play. And that's pretty much the best that you can do in the market at the moment because the market is not really great. So we'll see what happens with him. Um, let's see. Um, Coach Dave says none of those were really three were real options. It was just media fodder. If you guys have been here, you guys know that I never really got wrapped up in the Sane rumors or the Nabry. They were just examples of the types of players that would take you up a level and would make sure that you have increased your ceiling. I've never really bought into those rumors, and if you had been here, you would know that. Keenan says, I would really like to see a direct goal threat. Diaby is the kind of attacker I would like to see us bring in. He gives us a little something different. I disagree with you on this. I think Diaby is probably just in and around the same level as the rest of them. He just plays in a league where they play in a high line and they're really bad defensively. The Bundesliga is not a great defensive league. And so if you were to throw Saka or Martinelli in the Bundesliga, I think they'd score 15, 16 goals as well. So I don't necessarily see him as the type of player that's going to be that much better than what we have. But if we were to go for him, I wouldn't be like upset or anything. But I just have this weird feeling that we're more interested in maybe a Pino or something like that. I don't know why. It's something about Diaby. I'm just thinking like we're probably not that interested in him. And 55 million for him is an absolute joke. Alan says Pedro Neto is nothing to write home about. Swipe left. Let's see. Sam says Pino is a baller. He will give Saka competition for sure. And, I know this is probably a bad way of thinking about things, but I'm kind of like, if Liverpool are significantly linked to a player, I do think they're probably pretty good because their scouting is very, very good. So for me, it's a matter of like, okay, Liverpool are also linked to him, just like Liverpool were also linked to Fabio Vieira you know, and Pino isn't 60 million. They would probably accept something around 40 million because they just kind of have to. They're in a bad financial situation. You're not going to have to pay the release clause. So it would be less than what you would pay for Diaby. Giovanni says, so we cannot accept not being in Champions League next season, whether that's winning Europa or top four. I mean, not accept. We could really want us to finish in the top four. I think it has to be Champions League or whatever, but like there's just so many teams fighting for it. It's going to be really fine margins. I think these last two signings could really be the difference potentially between us making top four or not. So if we can make sure that we have an additional attacker just in case something were to happen to Jesus or Saka, and we can make sure that just in case Thomas Partey is not there, we don't completely fall off of a cliff. Those two signings could be so important for us, just like the Zinchenko one was, just like Gabriel Jesus. So we'll see what happens. I get where everybody's coming from, where we have to make it into the top four. We have to get Champions League. We have to do this. I get that. We all kind of know what the score is. Tiffany says, set the expectation, but acceptance isn't an element that changed much. I guess that's just my whole thing is like, we shouldn't accept it. If we don't make Champions League, what are you going to do? I guess that's my question, to people that are like, if we don't make it, then what? Are you going to go Arteta out? Like, what are you going to do? These are real questions because depending on what it looks like, and if we miss out by a point and we get to a Europa League final and we don't win, I don't see the club sacking Arteta. I think they're all in with him. So, these are conversations for another day. Don One says if Pino bangs, he will be off to Barca or Real. Spanish players ain't loyal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't want to pigeonhole people, and say that they're not loyal or whatever. But if you want to sell him to Barcelona Real, you could put a hefty price tag on him, so there's that. But I think he's a really talented player and would fit into what we're doing and would definitely fit in well with the group. So if it were to happen, I wouldn't have a heart attack or anything like that. There's 300 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Charlie says, I love your new brand, new setup. Keep it up. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, you guys. It's like, I like to just try to improve it a little bit, minute, like, a little inch by inch. And I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Jeff says we should be aiming to get 10 or 12 more points this season, and our league position will take care of itself. Fair enough. So yeah, I think that's enough for the Pino stuff. We'll just see how that works out. It's just a matter of waiting and seeing, because once Pepe goes, hopefully we'll see these things kind of fall into place. Now with Paqueta, this is a very interesting one, because there's times where I believe the club and there's times that I don't, and it just depends on the sequence of events and just my own gut feeling. And even though Edu came out and said that we weren't interested in Paqueta or whatever he said, I feel like that was just a bald-faced lie. Like, I really do think, and you guys know my theory on this is that, the initial reports on us being interested in Paqueta were really heavily based on getting full buy-in from him. And shortly after our interest was confirmed, then it was kind of like, okay, well, he wants to go to Spurs or Manchester City. Those would be better options for him. And I just think, it's just as simple as him saying, I just want to wait and see if any Champions League teams will come in for me. You know, that's, I mean, could you blame him though? Like, the reality, you guys, like, could you actually blame him? If he actually sat there and was like, hey, I'm interested to come in Arsenal, but I kind of want to see if anybody that's in Champions League will come and get me. And, if Spurs have already said, hey, we're interested in you, and Manchester City are like, if we sell Bernardo Silva, we'll come in for you, then wouldn't you wait? Some players are just not going to be 100% down to come to Arsenal. They're going to look at their choices and then make a decision. And I don't really think that that's a bad thing. And then, because it wasn't like necessarily like some bums out here talking about this. Like, it was Risa and a couple of other really reliable journalists out of Brazil, from Brazil Goals. So I don't think they were really just out here just saying whatever. I do think we have interest, but maybe we want to wait and see what happens, and see like if at the end of the window we could get him, or maybe a little bit later. So that's where Sasha Talioveri, let me just pull it up. I've never said this man's name right. Sasha Tavolieri. He responded to something that Chris Davidson put out around Moises Caicedo and Yuri Tielemans and stuff like that. He had wrote an article about that. And Sasha replied to him and said, my feeling is that Arsenal will wait to the winner to try to get Lucas Paqueta, who is the real priority for Edu Gaspar in midfield, as there is no real need at this position for the moment. So Yuri is interesting for AFC, but not a priority, which we've kind of heard multiple times. We have heard from several different sources that Yuri Tielemans isn't actually a priority. And I think when you really look at it, and this is partly like why I did that video around, does Arsenal really need Yuri Tielemans, which you guys should watch, is that you have Sambi, Zinchenko, Vieira, and Xhaka that could all play in that left 8 position. I won't even add, ESR or Odegaard, because, whatever. That's 4 players that can play in those positions. Now, I do know that we have different definitions of what depth is. If it's not quality to us, we don't consider it depth. But I do think when you look at Zinchenko and Vieira and Xhaka, that is a good group of left 8s. Not the best, but a good group. And then you have Sambi, that's pretty good, but is still needing some time. So if you have 4 players that can already play in that position, is it actually a priority? Maybe it's only a priority if somebody leaves or whatever. Or maybe you save that money, you don't go for Yuri Tielemans, and you try to push for somebody like Paqueta if he doesn't go to Spurs or he doesn't go to Man City. If there's a chance that you could get him in January, or you could get him at the end of the window, I feel like it's almost worth it, because I think Paqueta is a much better player than Yuri Tielemans. That is my opinion. You guys can let me know in the chat what you think. But if Yuri Tielemans is going to be there at the end of the window anyway, or potentially next summer or in January, but you have a chance to get Paqueta, why not wait? Why not wait? And that might be what Edu is thinking. Now, is that the right thing? Like, is that the right thing? Should we just go ahead and secure Yuri Tielemans and make sure we have an additional quality Premier League proven midfielder? I don't know. Some people do feel like we still need that. But for me, if there's a chance that we could get Paqueta if he doesn't go to Manchester City, because at the moment it doesn't look like Bernardo Silva is leaving. So that's one of his options out the door. If Spurs don't come in for him, maybe we do have a chance to get him. It might not be at the end of this window. Maybe it's in January. I don't know. Maybe somebody leaves. I'm not sure. But maybe then you could switch your attention to a central defensive midfielder. Maybe you go and do something like that. Maybe you make sure that you underpin Thomas Partey just in case. So I can see why Yuri Tielemans is, as the window goes on, it does feel like he's not really as big of a priority as maybe we had initially thought, or maybe I initially thought. But if it comes down to it, at the end of the day, if we have a 50% chance of getting Paqueta or a 100% chance of getting Tielemans, and we have the group that we have there now, I think I'd go with the 50 because I just feel like Paqueta would fit more in that position. Because when you really look at it and how Paqueta plays that, first of all, Tielemans has not been playing off of the left. That's something that's been continuously said. He plays off of the right. He doesn't really play off of the left. Fair enough. But Paqueta, the way that he plays in that left position it's everything that Xhaka is doing, but he does it better because he has the ability to dribble and to get away from his mark, and he's very tricky. So Xhaka does all the right things. He gets into the position, he's there for the pass, he can do the 1-2s, he gets into the space, but there's just some moments where, he can't turn and beat his man because he just doesn't have that ability. Paqueta has that in bags, and he doesn't only just have it in bags, he can play through the middle, and he can also play off of the right, and he can also play, in different positions. So I think at the end of the day, like, if a dude thinks that there's a chance to get Paqueta, then maybe he'll just sit and wait for the right person and not just settle for something that we don't actually need. And my reason for saying don't actually need is based on the thing, like having 4 players that are already there at Arsenal that can play that position, you know? So that's it's a very interesting thing. And the thing about, like, oh, if he wants to go to a certain team, if that team doesn't come in for you, are you just going to stay at Lyon? So if City don't come in for him, what is he going to do? Just sit at Lyon for the rest of his life? That's how things go. Sometimes you don't get to go to your first choice, maybe you have to go to your second. So the whole idea around, oh, he wants to go to City, well, if City don't come in for you, what are you going to do? So, and I do think people have to remember that, like, the club does certain things to make sure that the PR sounds right. And I just cannot see those reliable journalists just 100% making up the idea that we were interested in Paqueta. It just makes absolutely no sense. And a dude can come out and say, like, we're not interested in him, but I wouldn't be surprised if we really were. Giovanni says, I think we should go in for Paqueta and see if he's willing to come, then send Lakanga on loan. Like, I really like Lakanga, but he needs a loan. He needs regular game time. It's interesting that you say that, Giovanni, because there was a report that came out today around Sambi. I did think it was odd that there was a report that came out maybe a week ago around Sambi and AC Milan. It was quickly like it was quickly iced, that there's no chance and all this kind of stuff. But another report came out from Sports Witness. They're not the most reliable, but they said Sambi Lakanga does not enter into Arteta's plans for the season. They're not saying that Arteta doesn't like Sambi and he hates him. All it's saying is that a loan might be good for Sambi. And when you look at it, I don't see where Sambi is going to get a lot of minutes this season. I get in the beginning of cups and stuff like that. But if you have Zinchenko, you have Vieira, you have Xhaka, you have all these players that can play in those 8 positions, and he's really not somebody, I mean, even against like Champions League level competition, I don't think Sambi can play in the 6. So if he's not going to get a lot of playing time, and maybe we are thinking about bringing in another midfielder, maybe you do send Sambi on loan. And it's not about hating him or anything like that. I think people get way too emotional about things like this. Sambi needs playing time. Sambi's a very talented player, but just like Nuno, he probably may need a loan. So, yeah. And Sambi can say that he wants to stay and fight for his place, but if the club wants to loan you, don't do a Nelson. Don't do a Nelson. Arsenal wanted Nelson to go on a loan, and he decided to stay and fight for his place, and he inevitably didn't get any more playing time and halted his career. So again, it's not just always about what the players are saying. If the club decides, you know what, we're going to bring in another midfielder, you're not really going to get that much playing time. We're going to try to send you on a loan to AC Milan, which would be an excellent loan for a player like him. Why wouldn't you take it? Just because you want to fight for your place when you're not going to win it back. You're just not going to. So this is all just, we're just spitballing here, you guys. But I get that players say things like I've seen players say they're not going to leave and end up holding up another shirt 2 weeks later. I've seen managers say they're not going to sign any players and end up signing two players 5 weeks later. You know, let's not act like people say things and the opposite doesn't happen. It's all about PR and presenting things in a way that doesn't get you exposed, and so I do think there's probably interest in Paqueta. It may be based on, whether or not he gets other offers from teams that have Champions League, because let's get it right. He's a Champions League level player. Like this guy could be playing for many top teams. So, yeah, it's just about, seeing what's going to happen with that. But that's what Sasha said. It kind of echoes similar reports from earlier on in the window that we have another target that's more higher up the list than Yuri Tielemans, and that's why we haven't pulled the trigger on him. But, if Paqueta ends up going somewhere else, he ends up going to Spurs or City or says he wants to stay at Lyon and wait, maybe we do go ahead and pull the trigger on Tielemans. So you never know. Giovanni says, like with Vieira coming in and Zinchenko performing really well, Sambi needs a loan. Send him to Marseille with Tavares because then they can play together and work on their partnership. Yeah, I don't think loans are like a bad thing. Like I really don't. I think sometimes you do need a little bit of, first like Arsenal is a very difficult team to play for at the moment because we are a big club that's been in decline for a long time, and there's a lot of expectation and you're young, so sometimes like I really do think Nuno's just thriving in France because he doesn't have that level of pressure. I get that Marseille has its own pressure, but I highly doubt it's like what it's like at Arsenal. Keenan says we need a DM and a center back. Partey has only played 24 games each season, and when he's out, our performances drop levels. Also, if Holding goes, we are really light at center back, especially with White and covering right back. So we'll talk about the Holding thing at the very end. But in terms of like a DM, if we do, like I said, maybe not go after Paqueta or wait, and see if we can get a higher priority option. Maybe we do turn our attentions to a DM. We've been linked with Moises Caicedo. I think that's a pipe dream. I really do. I think he just got there. And he's only been there for a year, and Cucurella came in last season as well, I think. And you see how difficult Brighton is to deal with because they have their price and you can't whittle them down. Like it's not going to be like Leicester where you wait until the end of no, they're going to want exactly what they want for him. And he's a midfielder that a lot of different clubs would probably die to have in their midfield right now. So looking at the Cucurella, how they did that and how they almost got 60 million from Chelsea, I just don't see us getting him for anything less than 50, but he is a player that would be a good option behind Thomas Partey or with Thomas Partey, whatever you want to call it. But there is a gaping, glaring hole there, in our squad where we're playing well right now and it looks great, but we know we're just maybe an injury or two away from things looking very, very different. So if we're not going to get the left eight or another eight or whatever, I would like to see a DM come in. But I also saw like a rumor about Romeo. Did you guys see that as well? Like, I just went right past it because I was like, no way. I don't know what you guys think about Romeo from Southampton, but I saw us linked him as well, and I was like, oh, oh, um, yeah, people were debunking it. Yeah, so I don't know. I can't see us going after a 30-year-old in that position, but I think DM is definitely something that we have to look at, or we might be in trouble. Giovanni says, okay, so you guys want to talk about? We have to talk about Holding at the very end. Yeah. Bob says A loan makes sense for Sambi. Lionide says, yes, just a DM. A DM that can play ball, right? Let's be specific about the type of DM that we need. We need somebody um, that can play ball, right? Not just a destroyer, somebody that can actually circulate and dictate play. There's been a lot of negativity around, what I think they called over verticality on online. Arsenal passed the ball forward too much, and the culprit or the perpetrator, I probably shouldn't use that word, but is Thomas Partey. He passes the ball forward too much, and so we would need somebody that can kind of you know control the tempo and things like that as well. So it can't just be anybody, right? TJ says, I don't get why we haven't bought Tielemans, Partey, or Xhaka. Will 100%. Sorry, bought Tielemans, Partey, or Xhaka will 100% be injured at some point this season. So Nenny will play, and he's rubbish. CM is needed ASAP. Yeah, you guys know I don't rate El Nenny. I don't rate El Nenny, and I do think if he has to play more than a game or two, he's gonna get found out. And if you're not liking the over verticality now, you're definitely not gonna like El Nenny after he's played a couple games at difficult away grounds because on a sunny day against a really bad team can pass forward. But as we saw against Newcastle last season away from home when it really mattered, he went right back into hiding and in his shell. And for me, El Neni, I get that he's a good squad player, good guy, but I still don't see anybody behind Thomas Partey. I just don't. I don't see anybody there, so that's definitely something that we need to look at. King says, just came across you today. Already a big fan. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And Crispy Rice says, when has Xhaka been injury prone? He's not injury prone. His first, and only injury was last season. And so let's hope that he stays fit. There's 430 of you guys in here, which is insane. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep going. So apparently, this guy, Pedro Neto, has been offered to several teams. Now with the introduction, I don't know why it matters, but the introduction of Matthias Nunes, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, he's available. I don't know. I don't know why that would matter. Maybe it's really more about Guedes coming in. And I really think it's really stupid for Wolves to even be considering selling Neto at this point, considering the fact that they just cannot score goals. But I digress. But Pedro Neto could become a deadline target for a number of Premier League clubs. Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man United among clubs informed about his potential availability. His agent is George Mendes, so we know what he's all about. Move the player, move the player, move the player, big fee, big fee, big fee. And so he's probably going to be looking for a fat payday, and Pedro Neto will go to a good team this summer, potentially at the end of the window. I think this could easily end up being somewhat of a domino effect. There's only a certain amount of these types of wingers out there. And so when you have Neto, you have Anthony Gordon, which is absolutely not, but Gordon, Neto, Pino, there's only a certain amount of these wingers out there left. And Manchester United are potentially looking at a player for both sides. Chelsea's looking for at least one player, and so are we. So it could just be a matter of who gets Pino, who gets Neto, who gets this person. And so Newcastle are also involved. I think they're looking for and have been searching for a winger all season, or all summer. So they could also be a team that gets whatever other player doesn't go to one of the top teams. So it could just be a matter of who gets what, who gets who. And so Pedro Neto being also potentially available, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Neto is a good player. He's a left-footed player that plays on the right and on the left. And he fits that similar kind of quality as Pino, but I think he's a little bit more flair and a little bit more dribble, where Pino's a little bit more running into space, but kind of intense. He likes to take on his man. He has some quality in the box as well. He doesn't really have the numbers. Like him and Pino don't have the numbers, but I can't figure out if it's they don't have enough end product, or they're playing in teams that don't create enough, because we know with Unai Emery, they're not creating that many chances, and Bruno Lage and Wolves, they don't create as many chances. So it's hard to see if these players just don't have end product or if the teams that they're in don't create enough chances. But Neto is a class player. Like he's a very, very good player. He's fun to watch. He's exciting. And he's one of those types of wingers that make the opposition scared. And so I don't know what this would cost. I think Wolves are going to be looking for 60 something, because they have him on a long term deal as well. So this is one of those where we just have to see where the chips lie. If Chelsea get Gordon, maybe they stop there. Then maybe it's just between us and Manchester United. Maybe he goes to Manchester United and we get Pino. I think it's just a matter of, and it's all going to happen at the very end. I think it's going to happen all in those last couple of like 72 hours. So we'll have to see what happens. But I know a lot of Arsenal fans are really into Pedro Neto. And I wonder if it's just compilations and hype or if they actually really like him. Because for me, it's like, I don't really see that big of a gap between him and I don't see a significant gap between him and our players or Pino. I think they're all kind of in that same group. You guys can let me know what you think. Um, let's see. C Dub says Neto Pino. Timbo says we've got Martinelli and Saka on the wing, so you need someone who is just below them to challenge them. I think Neto is better than Pino for me. Fair enough. So some of you guys do think that Neto is better. I think they're all kind of in the same kind of like vibe, same kind of like group. But maybe Neto is better than I think. I watch him and I think maybe because Wolves are also like not very fun to watch in the attack. He's kind of like the little sparkle, but it just is what is this, you know? Alan says hype. Keenan says, is Neto after the injury actually better than Cho? I mean, he's having I think a better season so far than Cho. I mean, saying Cho, like Callum Hudson-Odoi doesn't play for Chelsea at all. Neto does play. And so after the injury, I don't know if you guys have seen a slowdown on him, but I haven't really seen a slowdown on Pedro Neto. You guys can let me know what you think. But this is also something that no decent, smart club is not going to consider before they put the M's down. So this is something that I'm sure Arsenal would look at, Chelsea would look at, Manchester United probably wouldn't look at it. They just buy him anyway and also pay a premium. But I think this is something that people would look at. But I wouldn't be so like Callum Hudson-Odoi is a very talented player that has been on the outskirts of Chelsea's first team and playing with their under 23s for a little bit. Pedro Neto is nowhere near as bad as Callum Hudson-Odoi. Actually, Neto is good. Callum Hudson-Odoi has been like forgotten. He's like their version of Nelson. That's really what it is. He's their version of Nelson. But after the injury, I don't think he's been that bad. Sean says, I like Neto, but that was a serious injury that he had. Let's see. TJ Emerson says Neto's end product is rubbish. Pramod says, Jess, do we need to spend so much on Neto or even Pino? I watched last 2 games of Marquinhos and he seems a good player. With Vieira being an additional cover for Saka, I'm not too sure. Well, I think Vieira is going to spend the majority of his time rotating with Granit Xhaka unless I know he can play in so many different positions, maybe as an emergency winger for us. But I would say like we do need an additional attacker and we should spend some money on it. Arsenal, for me, are one injury away from having a forward line. Like if you take Gabriel Jesus out of that group, I don't think you score 4 goals against Leicester. You know what I mean? Like I think he adds so much to what we're doing. And if he's gone, you're gonna have to pump it up a little bit more. And when it comes to like Marquinhos, I get what people are saying, and he looks really good and all this kind of stuff, but that's in the under 23s. We've seen that players come from the under 23s, which he's too good to be in the under 23s, by the way, and get into the first team, and they're really, really raw, and they're unable to really add anything to the first team. So I don't actually think Marquinhos is a good fit for that. And this is Arsenal. Like we have enough players that we brought through the academy and players that we brought on that are players for the future that we've rushed into the first team and all this kind of stuff. I think Arsenal need to invest in another attacker. It's really not that deep. And Marquinhos, I think he could do with maybe a loan. I think he can do a loan. Like I don't think he's ready yet. And just because he played well in the under 23s, remember Patino also looked really good in the under 23s, played a couple games for us and looked like a kid. I know Marquinhos doesn't look like a kid, but there's levels to this. So I don't think I think we need to invest in an attacker. And if Arteta and Edu felt like they didn't need another attacker, I don't think we'd be linked with him. I think Marquinhos would just be in the team. There's a reason why he's being played in the under 23s. The funny thing is, like, a lot of people in the chat, there's 435 of you guys in here that really rate everything that Edu and Arteta do. Um, but they're literally playing him at under 23s, and we think that he can back up Saka, even though we're being heavily linked with wingers. So it's kind of like they're telling you themselves, the people that are watching him day in and day out, that he's not ready. And so if he was ready, he'd be in the game day squad. You know, Vector Arsenal says, look at Eddie, Saka, Emil Smith Rowe, Jess, Marquinhos. I get that, but Arsenal can invest in a winger. It's not that deep. We need somebody that's ready to go. And we have a lot of players that we're investing in right now. We're investing in Martinelli, we're investing in Saka, Emil Smith Rowe. We are investing in those players because they're young players, and we could have went out and bought players to fill those roles, but we didn't. We didn't. So it's okay for us to invest in a winger and send Marquinhos out on loan. Everybody doesn't need to be rushed into the first team, I don't think. Blaze says Arsenal still need to buy a winger, even Marquinhos. We need a better winger who can give good competition to Saka. I guess for everybody who thinks that Marquinhos is good enough to play, can you guarantee that he can score 5 to 7 goals this season? If everybody who thinks Marquinhos is good enough, can you tell me 100% that you would back him with your money, your hard-earned cash money, coins, that he's going to get 5 to 7 goals this season? Because I would put cash money coins on, I think Nketiah will score 5 to 7 goals. I think Saka will get at least 10 goals. I think Martinelli will get at least 15. But I cannot guarantee you with my cash money that I think Marquinhos in the first team playing against grown-ups in the Premier League, where it's so much faster and you're playing against really good defenders, that he's going to give us 5 to 7 goals. And that's what we need off of the bench. And so it's not about always development. We have so much development going on within the squad. Let's just bring somebody in that can actually compete with Saka. Giovanni says Marquinhos isn't ready yet for Premier League. Send him on loan and get Zaha for a couple years. I don't want Zaha anywhere near Arsenal. Jeff says Eddie will get 10. Well, I would put my cash money coins on Eddie doing well. I just don't think we've seen anything but a couple of clips from the under 23s, and now we're saying we don't need a winger, and I just don't see it like that, to be honest. I think we need to invest. Timbo says, watch Marquinhos in preseason against teams he was not ready. Diallo, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Jess, I've said this before, and I hate to repeat myself. The form of Mr. Magalhaes is a serious concern for me. He looks like the weak link, uncomfortable. I hear you on that. With Gabriel, I just say this really quickly because we have to get through some of this. But Gabriel is one of my favorite players in the team. He really, really is. And he was one of the first players that has been a part of this project. And so, I love him to death. I do think that since preseason, we've seen some shakiness on the ball. We've seen some, mistakes. And I feel like we have to give Gabriel some time to adjust having a new partner and just let him get those first weeks off of his back, because there's some players in our team so far that have been a little bit shaky and a little rusty since the season has started. Partey, Gabriel, Saka, for me, have been a little bit slower to get into the groove. But do I feel like that means that we need to just have conversations about them so early? I'm not sure. It's only been 2 games in. But I see what you're seeing, Diallo. And I know that Gabriel has the rashness about him and he's not the best on the ball. But I want to see him maybe 10 games in before I decide that he's somebody that, we really need to be looking at and worrying about. That's kind of where I am with Gabriel. But he's somebody that I'm worried because I haven't seen them give him a new contract, and I'm wondering why. Um, I think he deserves a new contract. He's been here longer than Ben White, and he's making significantly less than him. And he has been our best defender like now that Saliba's come in, you might be able to like look at it differently, but he was our best defender. So for me, Gabriel is somebody that I'm not quite worried about because it's so early in the season. He's playing in a new partnership with two new people on both sides of him. It's not just Saliba, it's also Zinchenko on the other side. And what people don't seem to ever give Gabriel credit for is he's always playing with the weaker fullback in terms of defensive. So White last season was playing with Tomiyasu. Saliba's now playing with White. Saliba will play with Tomiyasu. Gabriel has played with Tierney. When he plays with Tierney, he plays well. But then when he played with Tavares, he struggled. And then when he's playing with Zinchenko, he has to do so much more defensive work. He's so isolated on that side. He has to do so much more work. So for me, I would love to give him like 10 games to see if he can like um smooth out some of that shakiness and see if the back line could get solidified enough where we can make up for it. But the thing also, you guys, Gabriel's never going to be better than certain people on the ball. He's just not. Like his technical level is what it is. He can get a little bit better, but he's always going to be somebody that's probably going to be the pressing trigger. He's going to always have that little bit of rashness about him. So there's just some characteristics that you just are not going to be able to get out of a player. But for me, Gabriel is just somebody that I just love too much to even be worried about him at this point. So yeah, let's move on from Neto and talk about Callum Hudson-Odoi. He's also been linked to Arsenal. Now, the original report was kind of coming from one of those like a YouTube channel that was saying that Arsenal were one of the main options for Callum Hudson-Odoi along with 4 or 5 other clubs. And so this immediately made me like, okay, I don't have to worry about this at all because he's not going to go to one of the top clubs. It was like us and Aston Villa and Newcastle were like the main options, and then probably some other clubs like lower down. But they only want a loan, and we don't need to be loaning Callum Hudson-Odoi from Chelsea. We should go and buy somebody that has been playing for a while. And I do think he's talented. I really do. But I'm not in for a rehabilitation job with this guy. We also don't need to be taking on his wages. I feel like there's not a lot, but there's other options out there that we should be looking at than Callum Hudson-Odoi. I understand why he might be on the list, but he better be low on that list. Very low on that list. He does it. I mean, so but I could see Callum Hudson-Odoi going to Newcastle, like or Villa. Those two clubs I can definitely see him going to. Teams that are trying to reach, the top 6, but need to probably cherry pick some of these players off of the top 6 teams to kind of get it, like the fringe players. So Callum Hudson-Odoi is one of those where he's a talented player. I do kind of feel bad about how things have kind of worked out for him there at Chelsea, but I don't want to bring that nonsense to Arsenal. And so it's a no for me. But some people really do rate him. Some people really do rate him. A loan for Callum Hudson-Odoi just seems like something Arsenal don't need to be doing. Timbo says so low on the list, his name should be written on the table, not the paper. Sean says, as Terry says, Callum Hudson-Odoi is a bum. Mike says, we already have a bench warmer here. Guy Charles says, if Chelsea allows us to buy Callum Hudson-Odoi, it means he's not highly rated by them. Don Arsenal says, why make him better for Chelsea? C. Wilder says, I'd rather play Pepe than Callum Hudson-Odoi. Coach Dave says he would be a fool to come here. Not sure why he'd get to play. Timbo says, nah, don't want that guy. Don't like him at all. C-Dub says he can clean Saka's boots. Yeah, and Bro Pro says it doesn't make sense if he wants to play week in and week out. And hit the whole thing about Callum Hudson-Odoi, if he's leaving Chelsea, it's probably because he wants to get playing time, and a loan would give him the opportunity to do that. I can easily see him going to Newcastle or Villa. Those two clubs would give him the ability to start games and play at a decent level. but not Arsenal. I think this is just a no for me. It's just a no for me. TJ Emerson says, Jess, I was at the Rangers versus PSV game last night and Gakpo done nothing. I have to say with Gakpo that one of the things that when he's playing in the Dutch league, he kills it. But every time that I've seen him play against opposition outside of the Dutch league, or most of the times that I've seen him, he's done nothing. And, I think he's probably a step away from being what we need in order to really compete with Saka and Gabrielle Martinelli. So, yeah, I'm kind of happy that those links have dissipated because we need better than that. I think we need better than that. Now moving on to Pepe. This is what we've all been waiting on, is somebody to have serious interest in Nicola Pepe. So Nice is interested in Pepe on a loan. This came from Get French Football News yesterday, actually coming from Football Mercado, and this is from that Santi FM, who's pretty reliable. Says Nice are targeting Nicola Pepe and have open talks with his agent. Both the player and Arsenal are open to a loan deal, and I think that's the right thing. I know we want to go ahead and sell him, but if he has a really good year at Nice, maybe we could sell him for quite a bit. So we'll see. Excuse me. But yeah, Arsenal are open for the loan. First exchanges with the agent have taken place. Interested player, and this is what we've needed in order to open up the spot to bring in a winger. So somebody like Pino can come in. Somebody like Neto could come in. This is what we've needed. So um, we have to figure out. I think the most important part of this is going to be about the wages, whether or not they'll pay all of them or a piece of wages or something. But if they could pay a piece of the wages, and a loan with an option or something like that, I think that's probably as good as you could do with Pepe at this moment. And yeah, like the agent is open. They've opened talks, and Arsenal are also open. I do think that this is something that could go through. Um, and I think he'd be happy too because he's not playing. It's not that he looks like somebody who's causing problems, but I can't imagine that he's 27 and he's happy to sit on our bench. So yeah, that might be the best for everybody. And most importantly, it opens up the space for us to go ahead and bring in the winger that I think we desperately need. John P says, really surprised Marseille did not go for him on loan. Yeah. Lynn says, I think that Pepe would do quite well at Nice. That will put him in the window for next season. I agree. Neil says, personally, my choice for a wide forward would be Diaby and Sane. They would cost a lot of money, but they would take us to the next level, which we all want. I disagree on Diaby, but I agree on Sane. But I think I don't think Sane is even really an option or ever really was. TJ says, shouldn't be loaning a 27-year-old. Can't force somebody to buy a player that you don't really want. You know, um, it was a bad deal, and everything about how it's panned out has just shown what a bad deal it was. Hopefully, we never get ourselves into this problem again because what we can see is that it's not even just the fee that we paid, it's the wages that he's on that really make him hard to shift. And when you have somebody on 150 grand per week and they're pretty comfy and it just makes it really difficult for you to move them on. So hopefully we've learned our lesson on that. And yeah, next time if you have the choice between the Premier League proven guy or the guy that just looks good on compilations that's only had one good season, go for the Premier League proven guy. We're going to pay about the same for them anyway, and we could have got Zaha 3 or 4 years ago and he would have been a much better signing than Nicola Pepe was. Don't buy players that the manager doesn't want. Emery didn't even want him. It was just crazy. Guy Charles says, I will drive Pepe to Nice myself. Bro Pro says Pepe is basically Mbappe in League One. I just want him. I know this sounds really bad. I just want to move on so that we can bring in somebody else and just do our thing and he can do his thing, to be honest. TJ Emerson says, but do you actually think Pepe is a bad player? I like Pepe. Well, honestly, TJ, I'm tired of the Pepe debates. I think they're stale. I think at this point, what's best for Arsenal is for Pepe to be moved on so that we can move forward with somebody that the manager trusts. And whether or not you think that he's a good player, which a lot of Arsenal fans do, Arteta doesn't rate him. You know, he doesn't fit our system. He doesn't fit what we're trying to do. And so that's more important than anything. And I know that there's we've talked about this to nauseam almost at this point around, did he get chances? Shouldn't we have played him this way? We should have played him through the middle. He should have done this. He should have done that. The only time that I felt like Arteta made a mistake with Pepe was when they brought in Willian after the FA Cup, because had they had just continued to play Pepe after the FA Cup, which is his best time at Arsenal, I do think we would have gotten a better result from him. But other than that, the chances that he's got after that, it's just he just hasn't worked out, you know. So I'm good. Like I'm good on it. I'm good on it. I'm really, really good on it. Um, But see, also Vieira didn't just look good in a compilation. I've watched full games of him actually playing, and he looked really, really, really good. You know, so Pepe is a compilation merchant. They showed him scoring the goals, but they didn't show the amount of times that he tackled himself, you know, on the pitch. So he had one good season. And again, you're also talking about the difference between playing 72 million for a prime age player versus playing 30 million for one of the most up and coming young Portuguese players, you know, this different. So people will always back Pepe. I think also some of it is just there's some people that don't like Arteta that feels like he treated him poorly. But at the end of the day, like, let's just move on. Like, why will we still be having these arguments about somebody that's clearly going out the door? So yeah, but hopefully he moves on and we can move on from him. There's 430 of you guys in here. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Last but least, let's talk about Rob Holding. I didn't put him on the oh, I did. Okay, I didn't do him dirty. I just didn't have space to put him on the bottom. Rob Holding has been linked to Villa. Now, this is interesting. It's interesting because they've lost Diego Carlos, which I think is a really big loss for them. They spent quite a bit on him. He's 29 as well. And he's finally gotten his chance in the Premier League, and bam, difficult. Like an Achilles injury is not easy to come back from. So hopefully, you know, it doesn't end his career or anything like that. But they're looking at Rob Holding, and man, I would bite their hand off for 5 million. I really would. I would bite your hand off for 5 million for Robert Holding. I mean, oh, I just feel like he's just so average, and I don't want to see him anymore. But they're also looking at Denier, who's a free agent, so they could go for that instead of Rob Holding. But you know, with Rob Holding, you know, would that leave us a little bit thin in the back line? I do think so, and I also don't want us spending any more money on center backs. So right now we have Gabriel, who doesn't have a true backup because there's nobody else that's left-footed back there, Saliba and White, and that's it for center backs. And you can tell me all day long that Tamiyasu can play there and Kieran Tierney can play there. I don't really want to be pulling players from their natural position and putting them in the center back position just because. So Holding, I do have this weird feeling that he'll stay. He's a part of like the group or whatever. He's a backup that, as long as he doesn't have to play a lot of games and not against good competition, he can be all right for us. And as long as he's playing with all the good players too. But yeah, Holding for me, like I don't think he's gonna move. But if they offer us 15 million or something, I think you have to consider it as well, because when is anybody ever gonna offer you 15 million for Rob Holding? But I just don't want us back in the market to bring in a center back unless that's what we were always gonna do. Which I do have this weird feeling that we may not get the midfielder, but we'll get the winger and we may still bring in a center back. Um, let's see. Seawalder says you can't get much better than Holding for 20 million. Um, let's see. Sean says Tommy is a CB, sell Holding and get a right back. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't like moving players from the position that they play. I mean, Tomiyasu is a right back, and I know he plays center back for Japan, but he's a right back. And it's like Alaba is a center back, but he plays midfield for his national team. I don't use what they do in their national team as a, you know, this is where they play. People play strange positions for their national teams. He's a right back, and I don't want to move him into center back, and because then you have to move somebody else, and then it's a lot. And buying a right back, I think that's something that we can wait until next season. Because personally, I'd like to see how Brook Norton Cuffey gets on. TJ Emerson says 5 to 10 games a season with holding shouldn't be that bad. It depends on what those games are. You don't want them to be at the business end of the season. You don't want them to be in finals. You want them to be early stage games, lower level Premier League teams. It just depends on when those games lie. 10 to 15 games could be detrimental depending on who you're playing against with Rob Holding. No offense to him. Taupe says sell Holding, buy Guardiola to compete with Gabriel. Our defense is sorted for 7 years. If Gvardiol comes in, Gabriel is on the bench. That guy is amazing, and I love Gabriel. But RB Leipzig have already said that they don't want to sell, and they've already turned down like City and Chelsea. So where are we getting 80 million from? And yeah, so I'm not sure Gvardiol is the one that would come in, but we'll see. Don One says 15 million or do one. Again, with the more attacking right back, I would like to see what happens with Brook Norton Cuffey. We may not have to buy one just yet. He's on loan. And right now we have Tomiyasu and Ben White that can play in that position. Some people are really obsessed with getting like a more attacking right back. For me, it's not that important because I think we have enough players that can kind of play there with the way that the system works now. We don't play with an attacking right back in the system. We never have with Arteta. It's always been somebody that's kind of been held back and played more like a midfielder. So I think we'll get an attacking right back when Arteta wants to change the system a little bit, and it hasn't been a priority this season, or this summer. So I don't think we'll do it. Zich says, if Holding goes, does that mean we need another player to replace him? If Holding, I mean, right now we still need a center back. I still think that Gabriel just being the only left-footed center back is a little bit like, okay, if he gets hurt, what do we do? I get that other people can play there and play with their right, but you know how important it is for the way that we play. So I do think we're a center back light, even with Rob Holding there. But, if we did get rid of him, we would have to bring one in for sure. For sure. Lucas says Brook Norton Cuffey is not on loan. He trained with the first team. He has trained with the first team, and they might keep him a little bit longer to see what he does. Maybe they'll keep him until January. But last time I read, they were looking to take him on a loan, or put him on a loan. So we have to wait and see. So yeah, I have loved this show, you guys, but it's time to go. Also, there's a super chat here from Aya. I want to read this out before we get out of here. Don't get the Holding hate. He's a perfect as a third choice center back. Which team has a decent third choice center back? And where are they going to find an experienced center back willing to be third choice? We need to calm down now. It's not hate. It's just he's not good enough to me. And I think if you think that he's good enough to play for Arsenal, then fair enough. There's a lot of people that believe Rob Holding and El Neni are good enough for Arsenal, good enough to be backups. I don't think so. And that doesn't mean that I want to, run after Rob Holding with a pitchfork. It just means I look at him and I think he's not good enough. When the going gets tough and we're playing in difficult matches, he tends to bottle it, So for me, it's not hate. It's just how I feel about him. Like hating players is a very deep concept that I don't hate players. I just think some are good and some aren't. And you know what team has a decent third choice center back? Liverpool does, Chelsea does, Man City does. A lot of the teams that we're fighting against do. So if we want to consider ourselves one of the teams in the top 4 and not a team that's floating somewhere around 6, then maybe we need to look ahead and not look behind. Of course, teams that are behind us don't have that, but teams in front of us sure do. So why would I feel like we need to have something different? So yeah, I think it's worth a look. But if Rob Holding stays, like I won't have a conniption or anything like that. It's just I don't think he's good enough. And I hope that he only plays in games that don't matter as much or games where we're really dominant, because we've seen what happened, when he had to play in games that really mattered. So there you go. Now, let's go ahead and get out of here because it's been an hour and I wanted to keep it short and sweet. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. At 7 o'clock, Vieira and Smith Rowe and I think Cedric are going to be playing for the under 21. So I'm going to be watching that. I won't do like a review or anything, but I'll be on Twitter. Hopefully, we'll get to see what happens with Vieira. But I really enjoyed this time with you guys. It's always my favorite part of the day, getting to talk to you guys. And yeah, we will start gearing up for the weekend tomorrow. Smash the likes, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.